In the meantime, Congress ramping up its investigation of Hillary Clinton's private email server. The focus now on her lost archive. Lawmakers will question Brian Pagliano, the man set up the server, and a staffer accused of physically destroying some of her devices with a hammer. That's tomorrow. Judge Anna Napolitano today, Fox News senior judicial analyst, and good morning to you.
Morning, Bill.
Chaffetz was on last hour. We're going to hear from him in a moment here. But
Right.
First of all, they want to find out what from these five?
Well, they want to find out what the two of them told the FBI in return for their immunity. The reason I'm doing this with immunity is I'm not sure they got immunity as we understand immunity. They got some sort of a promise that they won't be prosecuted for their own behavior as a result of what they tell the FBI. Unless that's in the form of an order signed by a judge, it's not immunity. It's just a promise not to prosecute. It's binding only on the prosecutor who signed it. It's not binding on other prosecutors.
So there's different degrees of law that interpret and define immunity in this case.
Yes, and as a result of that, and I'm sure Congressman Chaffetz knows this because he intimated it in his answers to your questions, he expects that they will probably take the Fifth Amendment. They will say...
They might. The question was, will they take the
correct.
Fifth?
I respectfully decline to answer on the grounds that the answer might incriminate me. In which case, Congressman Chaffetz can dispatch lawyers to go across the street to a federal judge who will examine what documents they say immunize them, decide if they got immunity, and decide if they still have a Fifth Amendment right. Because if you have immunity, then you don't have a Fifth Amendment right not to testify about the subject of the immunity.
If you're going to go to a federal judge across the street, you're going to wait a long time for an answer, Judge.
Well, there are procedures for emergent applications. They're not going to get an answer tomorrow, but they'll get an answer before Election Day.
Okay, you mentioned Chaffetz from last hour. This is what he said about it.
Two of them have been granted immunity by the FBI, so I'd expect them to sing like songbirds. I don't know that they will, but they should. They've gotten immunity. Why not come and testify and tell the whole truth?
He is, under the law, quite correct. If they got immunity, they waived their right not to testify. The question is, did they get immunity, or did they just get a promise not to prosecute? Is there some other theory under which they won't answer? My guess is they're not going to answer any of the questions that his people will put to them. Because once you answer a single question other than who you are, we went through this with Lois Lerner, who said, I invoked my Fifth Amendment right. By the way, I didn't do anything wrong. Once you answer a single question, you then waive your right to claim the Fifth Amendment for the rest of the questions.
Well, look at the facts and look at the timeline. March of last year, a year and a half ago, an order went out on behalf of Congress to preserve all the records.
Right.
They were not preserved.
Right.
They were destroyed.
Right.
They were taken out with bleach bits.
So
they were taken out with a hammer. If they did that to you or to me, they would drag us before Congress. Or first we go to jail.
Yes, but in answer to another question you gave him, Congressman Chaffetz names the people who he thinks gave the order to destroy this. He named David Kendall, Mrs. Clinton's chief lawyer, and Cheryl Mills, her chief personal aide. That's what he wants to ask these two. Who instructed you to do this? How could you have done it? Did you not know that there was an order to preserve that which you were destroying? That's the question they want to ask.
So the FBI goes to Brian Pagliano.
That's the IT guy that set up the server.
Right, set up the server. So he's at the heart of all this.
Right.
Why would you even suggest immunity for him if you're trying to figure out what happened, when and where, and who gave you the order?
You know, here's why it's so inexplicable. I can't get my hands around this. Federal judges are only supposed to give immunity in order to induce testimony before a grand jury or a trial jury. There was no grand jury in this case. The FBI didn't present a single piece of evidence to a grand jury. They didn't get a subpoena from a grand jury. They didn't get a search warrant from a judge. So what was the purpose of the so-called immunity? That's what I would ask Director Comey, and they're probably going to call him back before this same
Who gave it?
We don't know who gave it or in what form it was given.
Where did it come from?
Right, right. These are questions that the public wants to know answers to. Will we get answers before Election Day? Who knows?
All right, that hearing is 10 a.m. tomorrow, so 24 hours from now, we'll see what we get then.
Yes,
Thank
we'll
you,
be watching.
Right on, for sure.